this stuff.
Okay, and we're live to review the episode Murder at a Crappy Motel. That's right, isn't it, Jeff?
No. It's called Full Moon. And it was written by Eric Overmyer, Tom Fontana, Henry Brummel, and Eric Overmyer. Well, I said his name twice, but they have listed under teleplay and also story. And directed by Leslie Libman and Larry Williams. So, 2 directors for this one.
One of these days, I will have the slides ready to go when you talk about who wrote the episode.
Yeah, that'd be great. Originally, it aired April 5th, 1996. But wait, you cry out in a raspy voice, as Shadow Stevens used to say. Why, if it's only the 10th episode of the season, why was it airing April 5th? Well, it's a good question. You'd have to ask NBC people that as to why they aired it so late. There's not a separate recap per se, but David B226 Morris did review this, and he pretty much gives the plot in his review, so I figure I'd go straight to that. And he says, in the biggest shift of continuity of the 4th season, though Full Moon was chronologically next in sequence, NBC executives held it back until the season was nearly over. The main reason was they wanted to have the more sensational episodes at the head of the season and save the offbeat ones for last. This conclusion leads me to believe that the powers that be at NBC had no idea what Homicide was all about, because as the constant viewers know, the weird, more daring episodes are often the best. Full Moon isn't quite of the level of, say, Bob Gunn or A Doll's Eyes, but one can certainly not fault it for being one of the most daring episodes in the show's history. For one thing, almost the entire episode is spent outside the squad room. For another, we only see 3 of the show's regulars, Kellerman, Lewis, and Munch. And lastly, the episode is set almost entirely at one location, the New Moon Hotel on the outskirts of Baltimore, an establishment that deals with the lowest in society. As we find out, 98% of the residents have some kind of criminal record, and 2 of the people who don't are using false names. The victim, not surprisingly, is an ex-con named Charlie Wells. As ex-cons go, he is slightly more eccentric than the usual junkie. He has spent the last several months trying to secede from the U.S., getting rid of almost every kind of government ID, from his Social Security card to the license plate on his vintage bike. He has a very unusual tattoo that relates to his mother, and when he is found, he has only one boot on. Meldrick spends much of the episode agonizing over this, only to find that the deceased only wore one at a time. Not every shoe has a mate, as his daughter puts it. Despite these eccentricities, Wells will not be missed by the world. Nevertheless, Lewis and Kellerman spent the episode combing the motel, trying to find out who killed him. Even for crappy motels, the New Moon is low on the odometer. The walls are so thin that a bullet passes through 3 rooms when fired. The water comes out green, and there is a fairly high level of criminal activity going on. Among the assemblage of guests are a family of illegal immigrants, a meth head junkie, a prostitute still doing business, and 2 out-of-state robbers still in hiding. There is so much crime that in the course of the investigation, Lewis and Kellerman solved 2 completely unrelated murders. If the investigation involved Bayless and Pimbleton, this might have been a fairly dark and grim episode. However, since it involves Lewis and Kellerman, the episode unfolds in a slow, rambling, digressive way. It is a character study, like many homicides, but it has a much lighter tone. Serious subjects are discussed, to be sure, Mike complaining about the illegal alien problem, Meldrick's dismay at the demolition of the housing project that he grew up in, but these things don't seem as dire. Indeed, the murder itself seems a little less important than the people the detectives meet in the course of the investigation. The most memorable characters are Ramona, a prostitute who likes to swim nude in the motel pool and who had a thing for Wells, and Lonnie Askew, a Native American who served 10 years for killing one of his friends in a drunken car accident. Askew seems the most obvious suspect, but as it turns out, he is a more sad character than the others, in many ways still a prisoner of the death he caused. However, he is one of the only residents of the New Moon who there is hope for. At the episode's end, he checks out of the motel to find a better place to live. Like many of the episodes of Homicide, this is an experimental show, and while the experiment is not quite as successful One has to give it points for originality as well as being an example of some of the better work that Clark Johnson and Reed Diamond would do this year. In later seasons, both characters will be traveling into dark territory, so it's rather nice to see the two of them do lighter stuff very well. The episode also has one of the better musical scores, particularly a lonely guitar, which seems to be playing throughout the show. However, there are at 3 or 4 times during the episode that it tries to go into more serious drama that doesn't quite mesh with the overall mood. The most old-school element of the show comes when Mike and Meldrick arrest the man who seems like the most likely suspect, who has the right weapon, only to find out that while the weapon was used in the murder, it wasn't used to kill Charlie Wells. Full Moon works most of the time, especially in that the murder is never solved, but the episode never quite reaches the great level that we have come to expect of Homicide. It's interesting and it's amusing, but like the victims, it's very hard to care about the episode. But even as an exercise, it works well enough to make it enjoyable. My score, 8.25. So that's what he had to say. What do you think, Ben?
I think that eventually I can open up these. Now, Jeff, what I've written here is, and this is about the gun permit. Do you have a permit for free speech? I mean, that's a constitutionally protected right as well, so surely you need a permit for that, because having a gun is a constitutionally protected right, and if you need a permit for a gun, don't you need a permit for speech? Or is that a little bit of an inconsistency there? Why didn't anyway, I'll get back on track. So there was the bit where when they were talking about was Ramona the name of the prostitute?
Yep.
Who was probably a little bit too good looking for a prostitute in that situation. And there was a good line about when they were discussing her alibi and about the fact that, you know, not many, and Lewis's line was, not too many Johns want to tell the truth and nothing but. And then when he was talking about his youth, looking at the place where he lived as a child, about this woman who, about this probably, you know, underage at the time. Well, probably when he was saying, well, probably about 12. When he said, "I watched her get undressed before she grew anything worth watching." Well, so that's those notes done. I didn't think it was that weird, and I actually was quite upset when the guy, was about to hit his wife or significant other in that scene. But I like the fact that he wasn't so grim. And I like the music. Yes, the Indian, the Native American character was interesting enough. They could have done a little bit more on the Elvis Jesus freak kind of guy.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said that term, Jesus freak. Right. What else? Could have done a bit more on him. I don't even know if he spoke, that guy.
Yeah, but not on camera, I think. I think everything you heard him say was when they weren't actually showing him. Showing his face, anyway.
Right. Okay. Who else? Yes, good scene between Kellerman and the prostitutes. Although it did feel... No, it was reasonable enough. But, I mean, I don't think that she would be... I would think that she would be a higher class of prostitute.
I don't know. I mean, I didn't find her super good looking myself, so it seemed about right to me. She sort of had that trailer park look to her, to me,
Okay.
which is essentially what this motel is. In my where I live, it would be trailer park. In Baltimore, it's outskirts motel. So
Right. Well, everything's bigger in Texas.
yeah.
But that's the thing though about Baltimore. Baltimore's in a state, and arguably the south of Maryland is where is it? Just above the Mason-Dixie line, but Maryland.
Maryland was a Confederate state,
Ah,
which will come up in at least one future episode.
right, right. Thinking back through the episode, it looked nice when it shot at night. I thought that because the lady in the see, maybe they didn't specify in the script that she was Asiatic, because she did look a little bit similar to the woman that Lewis had a crush on. You know, the one that was the NFJ that got it on with Bayliss. What was she called?
Oh, Emma Zool.
Yeah, Emma Zool.
What about her?
Well, I'm just saying that I would have thought that Lewis would be attracted to this woman who looked similar to her. Right.
I don't know. I didn't think she looked that similar to her.
Right. Anyway, that might not have been specified in the script. It would have complicated things. What else? Yeah, there's some of the plot points were quite complex, I think, compared to previous episodes. I don't think we ever got to saw the bike. I've took various candidates for the thumbnail, and I'll show you one of the early ones. I'll open up the photo gallery, see if it reminds me of anything. Yes, I think that the guy playing Kellerman is a good actor. He comes across well. And I too like Lewis. In fact, it would be good if the show was Munch and Lewis. in my opinion.
Well, they'll have some more scenes together as the show goes on. So,
Right, what have we got here? We got. Right then, okay. I'm just gonna open this. What we got here? Oh yes. Now, what? I have a question for you, Jeff.
don't make it too hard.
No, it's the question is. There we go. Why is the camera boy wearing an obviously fake mustache?
I don't think he is my answer to that.
Oh, okay. It just looks a bit weird to me. Now, I was thinking of making this
I don't have any
thumbnail.
reason to think it's fake anyway. About that.
Pardon?
I said I don't have any reason to think it's fake. I'll just put it that way.
I was thinking of making this the thumbnail.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
So there were good candidates for thumbnails in this. So that's not bad.
Yeah.
That would be quirky. So he gets this like first bit like, and he's just like camera boy, Max Perlick. Max Perlick is camera boy.
He does.
So, okay.
Ben.
Pardon?
I said he does have a name. The camera boy.
I can't remember his name.
His name's Brody.
Oh, Brody. Okay, so Ron Bryce and Clarice and Charisse Brown. Did they go on to do anything significant?
I don't know.
So they don't spring to mind. How about any of these?
Nope.
Okay. And what about the Reverend Horton Heat?
I mean, I'd heard of him before, but not exactly a fan, so I don't know much about him.
Right, and there we go, teleplay. But any behind the scenes scoop as to why there were two directors?
No, I don't know. It's interesting because I know that there were some cases in Doctor Who stories that I read where they had more than one director, and that was usually because the BBC was in charge of assigning directors, and sometimes, like halfway through a story, that director would be needed for something that the network deemed more important, and they moved him over to that, and they had to have a different director shifted over to finish the Doctor Who story.
Or sometimes the director didn't work out.
Well, yeah, there were a few cases where there was like illness or something like that happened. Like in the last Doctor Who story that Douglas Camfield directed, he started to get ill in the middle of that and had to pretty much take his leave.
Now, I may have mentioned this before. I probably have mentioned it before, but Douglas Camfield refused to have any music by oh dear, I've forgotten his name. But you know the guy who does all the music on Blake 7, and he did a lot of Doctor Who music?
Dudley Simpson?
Yes, Dudley Simpson. Refused to have any music, so there was sort of like a bitter rivalry between the two of them for some reason.
That's interesting. I think you told me that before, but
yeah, that's why when he did there was no Dudley Simpson music on the episode that Douglas Camfield directed.
Well, my favorite Doctor Who music guy was Tristram Cary. He's the one who came up with the what I would call the iconic music for the Daleks, because they reused music in almost every Dalek story after he created it the first time.
All right. So yeah, so maybe it became ill. Right, so we're going to the next one. And then there's this woman is a candidate for the thumbnail. What's weird is I can't hear you when you're not speaking. I know that sounds weird. I think it's the way the mic works on the iPad, where it's like it totally shuts the sound off, so you can't I can't hear any background noise.
Well, that's good, right?
Yeah, but it makes me think like sometimes that you're not there.
Well, I'm here.
You know that maybe that you've lost the connection in terms of the sound, because as you've mentioned before, that the iPad does this because many people use it without earphones or headphones. So it's the way that it prevents the echo thing. Right, so I might use one of these, or I may use those two when they're on the deck chair. I just thought that maybe for this kind of that her skin might be worse. Right.
Well, she is in a job where it's important for her to try to look good, so
Yeah, I know, but a lot of them.
she probably does do some work on her skin, I'm sure.
Yeah, because I remember Laura, what's she called? The radio show host was talking about, when they did that thing where the two young conservatives posed as a hooker and a pimp.
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
And Laura said that she was too good looking to be a prostitute. Right.
No clue.
She's a radio talk show host. Blonde.
And talking about Dr. Laura?
No.
Laura Ingram?
Yes, Laura Ingram.
Okay. I know who she is, but I don't know the incident you're talking about. Or
right. Well, I'm not going to make that the thumbnail. I might make this the thumbnails. One of these ones. Yeah, you're not usually getting me in a video complaining about someone being too good looking. But yeah, she's. I think in the end she was cast okay. Right. Might even use that as a thumbnail. Right. I might use the benches though. And then you had this is the daughter of the victim. And then more meth going on. And then this guy. Now, any information about these people?
Nope. Well, except to say that I thought that M. Cochise Anderson was probably about the only weak link in the cast, and even he was all right. But he had a couple of his lines that just kind of sounded like he was reading the script. It's because Homicide is so well casted, and usually the actor's really good. It sticks out to me when someone sounds a little bit off, and so when he was when Lewis went back to his room the second time and they had that conversation, and he was doing his sort of monologue about going through what he did, going to prison because of, his friend dying in the motor accident. That there's a little bit of that. It seemed like he was just trying to spit the lines out as fast as he could, and it didn't. It took me out of it a little bit.
Was he the Indian guy? I mean, like the Native American?
Yes.
Right, I thought was a little bit bad. The guy playing the Indian motel owner.
No, I thought he was great. I liked him a lot.
Alright. Okay. Right, so he was the guy, he was the one playing the Native American in his hair in a ponytail. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Right. Well, this is one of these episodes where there's not much to complain about, but
yeah, for me, like I said, that one little bit of acting I thought was a little bit off from him. I agree with you that they should have done a little bit more with a couple of the characters that they really didn't focus on. They just kind of seemed like, why were they there when they really didn't get into it very much. But there probably were a few things cut for time, I imagine, that were probably in the original script.
I think that it could have been better in that it could have been a lot more interesting. Like everyone could have been up to something weird in there. You know what I mean? Like so it's like their reaction. You know what I mean? Like there's loads of different. Like they could have gone further with the idea of the guy, being a libertarian. Like it could have been like a real case that like spun on, with like weird stories. Like everybody. So it's like they've got like 7 weird people going on. So it could have been better, but as you know, the they're pressed for time. I saw potential in it, like it to be even better, but that kind of intricacy would have taken longer to write. And I think that if this episode had been in, say, season 2, was it only 4 episodes, season 2?
Yeah.
Or even that it would have been worked on a bit more. And it was still good, but they could have, like, I think it would have been very crammed with the number of people in it to, like, give them more complex backstories and things that they're into. It would have made it even more complex. So maybe they could have done it as a multi-part episode, like interspersed with something else. But yeah, it was an interesting.
Yeah, I think it probably works. This actually probably works better as a standalone episode, even though as the review pointed out, there wasn't a particular reason to put it so late in the season. But it does. It was easy to do that with it, since it really didn't have much reference to anything else that was going on outside of the episode. So
I thought the denouement was a bit disappointing. So, for instance, you know the way the other one was disappointing. The one with the you liked it though, Sniper Part 2.
yeah, I mean, I like both of them, and to me, like I said, I can pick at this one and find things that maybe were a little bit off about it or a little bit missing, but overall, I liked it a lot. And I think it kind of worked, because the things that are best about Homicide, I agree with what Morris said about the character stuff, and just sort of going about the business, doing the job, and not having things handed to the detectives very often. Is more realistic that in a situation like this is likely to be a case that they wouldn't solve, because it's one of those cases where as opposed to the whodunit situation where you don't have a clue who to suspect. In this one, there's too many suspects but no evidence. There's no real evidence to tie anyone to shooting Charlie Wells that they can find. Everything else is gone. So you can make you can assume it either way. You can either assume that the killer got away and was long gone, or that they really did come back to the motel or never left in the first place. Like to me, it's fun to speculate. There's all these different possibilities of what could have occurred. If you put everything together, to me, the most realistic possibility, if it was one of the people they introduced on screen, is that it was the Indian guy. It was Askew, and that was the reason, like I said, that he was the one that didn't have a car, walked up, and when Lewis said, you sold the bike and went grocery shopping, that very well could have been what happened. But that's not necessarily what happened. There's obviously other possibilities too. So. Morgan and I were talking about it again yesterday. We were sort of making the case for how it could have been each of the other characters in terms of what would be their motive or the way that they pulled it off. There's no particular reason. Some of them, there's no particular reason to suspect them. Like, they didn't really establish a motive for them. But that doesn't, of course, mean that they didn't do it, because they don't always discover what the motive is.
Yeah.
But what I love about Homicide is the details of everything. And then if you want to go back and put things together, you can do that, because they gave you so much information. Like, the kids from the illegal immigrant family said that they would play on his motorcycle. Well, maybe one time he was high or whatever, and he yelled at the kids, and one of them came back and shot him. So there's all sorts of possibilities.
I don't really know what to say about it. I suppose I'll give it about a 7.
And I will give it a 9.
Ooh.
I almost said 10, but then I started thinking, yeah, there was enough thing to me. A 10's really got to be one where, I'm just so into it that at the end it's hard for me to come up with flaws in the episode. And in this one, I can come up with some flaws, so I would have to give this one a 9. But I like it a lot. It's one of my favorites of this season. And as I said earlier, now you know what I was talking about in the last one when I said about how they had. We were talking about straining the budget sometimes for episodes, and then ones that have less of a budget. Obviously, this one, other than just paying the guest actors, there wasn't a huge budget involved.
No.
This was one of the lower budget episodes.
I think in terms of Homicide episodes, that I might give it an 8. Yeah.
All right.
No. Because, like, if I'm comparing it to something like Red Dwarf that I like a lot more, then so it's an 8 for a Homicide episode.
All right.
So, for instance, if you ever gave Blake 7 an 8, I don't know if that would be the same as an 8 for a Homicide episode.
Yeah, it would, because like I said, the way I rate them is
Right.
overall enjoyment level. So if there's a Blake 7 episode which I enjoy that much, I'm going to give it the same score, which I think, if I remember right, there was one episode I gave an 8 of Blake 7, I think.
It may have been Deliverance, where you had the woman, Megat, calling Avon Lord Avon.
It might have been that one.
Or Countdown.
Or Countdown. Yeah, it could have been Countdown, I think. That was probably overall my favorite episode so far, anyway. So, yeah.
So
yeah, I can seem like I'm a tough critic sometimes, but the reason that my Homicide scores are higher is not because I have a different scale. It's because I just think Homicide's that good.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, when I do my reviews of course, comedy is different than drama, but I've done Simpsons reviews and also Doctor Who reviews that I've scored, through out of 10 and stuff. And there's Doctor Who, of course, a much longer running show, so it runs the gamut, but I've got every rating there is on a Doctor Who episode because I did audio stories too, and there's one audio Doctor Who story that I gave a 1 out of 10. And then, of course, even just sticking to the audios, there's ones I've given a 10. So I've gone all the way, the whole scale on those. And with Simpsons episodes, in the first few seasons, there's probably nothing that ranks lower than like a 5 or something. But then once it gets to about season 7 or 8, and then there starts to be a few that are lower than that. So,
I mean, I would even, if I really hated something, I would give it a minus number.
Well, I have yet to. See, that's the thing is, I can't really give anything lower than a 1 because if it gets like a 0, then I don't finish watching it, and then it's like an incomplete.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's if you have to watch it in order to review it.
Right. The new series Doctor Who, there was an episode. I don't even remember the name of it now, but it was something about a werewolf, and I couldn't stand it. I turned it off. So I could conceivably give that one a 0.
Yeah.
But it's really more like an incomplete because I couldn't stand to finish it.
Yeah, that's when it is bad.
And really, if I wasn't determined to get the reviews done, that audio story I mentioned that I gave a 1, I probably wouldn't have finished that one either. No. But I kept hoping that somehow at the end it would get better, and it never did. So, but anyway. Anything else you wanted to say about Full Moon?
No, except we could have a little discussion about it, and I don't know whether it's been brought up. So how come you need... so freedom of speech is a constitutionally protected right, as is the right to bear arms. So why is there a permit? Why are there gun permits? How is that not
I think that, because it's not a federal permit. it's a more local jurisdiction than that, and I think the local government has the right to say that within our jurisdiction, we want to know who has guns, and so they have like I think that's what the explanation would be, because there is no federal gun registry, and a lot of people there have been people who advocated for that, but obviously a lot of people have opposed it, so that hasn't gone through. But
now, I actually heard there was a lot about this because before the 14th Amendment, and originally, there were state religions, because it was Congress shall issue no law abridging the freedom of speech.
Yeah.
We didn't mention the state governments.
Yeah.
It was U.S. Congress.
Right, because the Constitution, a lot of people today don't realize the Constitution was created to protect state and local from the federal government being too intrusive.
Now, but the thing is, though, having said that, the Constitution was never passed by the state legislatures. It was passed by constitutional conventions.
True.
So, arguably, it's not even valid.
But
there's nothing you can do about it.
Even within it, though, the states do have the power to call for another constitutional convention if they wanted to rewrite the whole thing. So,
well, why don't they should do that?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people who think they should, but not enough that it hasn't happened yet. So that's the thing, is that, as we know, with our majority guardian society, is that there are more people who support the status quo than those who really support change of anything. So whatever the status quo is, whoever it benefits, there's more people that are just having if it ain't broke, don't fix it attitude. And their standard for whether it's broke is obviously whether it affects them.
Yes, that's the thing, because ultimately guardians are practical, because they're about the logistics, and when the logistics fall down, like say you have a situation where you've got hyperinflation, or like the economy completely collapses, then the guardians will go, I'm not happy with this. This is
right. I mean, it has to be pretty much a crisis before they're going to think that we really need to have any kind of big change.
Because, as we all know, the guardian mentality is to use the system to work within the system.
Mm-hmm.
And even not even at like a cynical level, but that's how they feel. It's like, it is what it is. You obey the law. And I suppose it's the ESTJs that work their way up the system. And that's how they get to be in charge. Because they have this whole structure to get up. So, then, you might know about this. So, was freedom of speech... I mean, didn't they have the Alien and Sedition Acts that abridged the freedom of speech? Didn't they? And that was only about 20 years after the Constitution was passed. Anyway, we're getting a little bit off topic. So, yeah. So it was okay. I'll give it 8 out of 10 for a Homicide episode.
All right, then. Well, join us, folks, next time. Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
The reason why I say that, folks, is that I'm doing it for a genre that I don't watch that much.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, it's like if somebody doesn't like beef burgers, but if they're being given like the best beef burger ever, they might say, yeah, I can see how that would be a 10 for somebody who likes beef burgers. It's you know what I mean? It's like if somebody gave you a wine, and it would go, well, if I were a wine drinker, I can see how this was really good.
Yeah, well, to me, I mean, I can do that, but to me, I've never found there's a reason to.
Right.
Like, to me, I just look at it as, if I'm going to give something a rating, it's just what I think of it in my own enjoyment level, and I don't try to qualify it with, within this. Now, if I was a professional critic, then obviously I would kind of have to do a little bit of that, because it couldn't just be about my level of enjoyment. But since I'm not, and I'm just reviewing these for fun, then then I can do that with everything, and that's what I do. And I can, I mean, I can tell you the difference between something I enjoy just because it's fun versus something I enjoy because there's something else beyond that. And I can say that Homicide is both, in that it is a fun show, but it also has a lot of layers and elements within it that, you know, a show, I can enjoy a show that doesn't have all that stuff. Fun, but it could conceivably sometimes be even higher enjoyment level. So it depends, you know, on how something is presented, you know. And the only accounting I do of the genre is just it probably affects my expectations, because obviously an idea, you know, once you've seen a few episodes of something, you kind of have an idea of the general kind of way the show is done. And so if there's something that's very different than the usual style, then obviously that's going to stand out one way or the other. You might enjoy it more, you might enjoy it less based on that. And obviously back to that thing we said about, you know, Guardians or status quo things, you know, I'm not saying all Guardians think the same way on this, but probably I would say that there are people that they do get used to how a show is, and if there's an episode that's very different from what they're used to, they might dislike it simply for that. They're like, this isn't the show that I am used to, or this isn't the show I like. Why is it so weird for this episode or something? And I think what was good about Homicide is it had enough variety of things where even when there was one that you could say was different, you can say, well, you know, but there's a lot of episodes that have certain qualities that are different. So it's not like it was all, you know, one way and then you have this one episode that's weird. But you did have some that were weirder than others. Like obviously the one that the gas man that, you know, there's really not much from the perspective of the detectives is going to be one that stands out as being quite different than a lot of the other ones. So
do you think this episode was influenced by Twin Peaks?
I don't know. It's possible.
I
didn't really watch Twin Peaks, so I don't know a lot about it.
Because, you know, they've got the idea of, like, someone's trying to solve a crime and there's all these weird characters around.
Yeah.
That seem to have their own, like, backstories and stuff. So it's almost as if this could have been, like, a mini-series in itself.
Yeah, it probably could have been.
Yeah.
There's potential. I thought about this before because, I mean, both you and I have, since we're fans of, you know, shows that were BBC shows that have had big Finish audio productions made, I've thought for a while now that Homicide would be a show that they could do audio stories with, bringing back some of the original cast. That would be
yes.
I would love to listen to something like that. And it would also give them the freedom to not have the network interference as much and be able to, you know, maybe tell the stories a little bit closer to how they wanted to in the first place on some.
But you see, the thing is, because thespians are paid more in the United States, and whereas the ones with Doctor Who are a little bit more broke, and Peter Davison does it, of course, because he's a massive fan of Doctor Who.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said some of the cast, because I don't know who would agree to do it. I mean, obviously, in my fantasy, you know, everybody who was in the show that's still alive or still working and as an actor would come back and do it. But obviously, I know that probably wouldn't be the case. But even if you could only get 2, 3, 4 of them, you could still make some great stories with them. I mean, you think about the Doctor Who audios, a lot of them are basically two main cast members in terms of the Doctor and a companion. So as long as you have that, then you can tell a story. So with Homicide, really, all you need is one set of partners, you know, maybe G if you can get him, you know, and then you've got enough for what they did with Dragnet. You know, in the Dragnet radio show, it was usually, you know, it was Friday and his partner and the Chief, and that was about it as far as the regular cast.
Now, because you like Avon, you'd probably like these more, which is like the Liberator Chronicles, where basically it's inside Avon's head all the while, because he's like the narrator, and you have like 1 or 2 other characters.
Yeah.
So it's like, and you got Paul Darrow doing the narration. So
yeah, and I've listened to several of the Companion Chronicles Doctor Who ones and enjoyed them. So, you know, there's a lot of potential for stuff like that. And Homicide could do something similar. You know, you could have, even if all you could get from the cast was Richard Belzer, who's played Munch so many times, but you bring him back and you have Munch tell a story, and then you could have some other actors that played other characters within the story, but have it be Munch telling the story.
Isn't he still on? I mean, I think he'd be a bit well off by now, Bells, after being what is he, the most prodigious character ever?
Yeah,
in American TV.
I'm not saying that he's starring for money. I just think there's potential that he might enjoy doing something like that. I don't know.
Well, hopefully.
I have no idea. I mean, Reed Diamond read the audiobook. He does the narration of the David Simon book. So, he's who plays Kellerman. You could maybe get him to. Anyway, and the great thing about it is you could set them anywhere in the narrative you wanted to. So the reason I brought that up in the first place is you could revisit the new Moon Motel and have more of that story, especially if you could get Lewis and Kellerman back, then you'd have more of that stuff, or more of those other characters if you could get any of those actors.
Yeah, it does. I think they were trying to go for a Twin Peaks thing. Yeah.
Well, anyway, next time, ladies and gentlemen, will be a first, because our next in this series will be our first Law and Order review. So we'll look forward to that.
Have I got to watch that?
Yeah, otherwise you won't know what's going on in the Homicide story.
Right. And is it in this DVD set?
When I don't know what you mean by this. It's in my DVDs, but it may not be in yours. So we'll talk about that off air. But but anyway, it's called Charm City, everybody. So if you want to follow along, watch the Law and Order episode Charm City, and then that's what we'll review next time in this series. So.
Oh, okay. Okay, bye, folks.
Bye.